Welcome to Green Mountain Mornings here on WKVT 100.3 FM AM 1490. 10 minutes past the top of the hour. I'm your host, Olga Peters. And welcome, Wendy Levy from the Commons.
I get fanfare?
Oh, you should have a band follow you at all times with like banners and sparklers.
You're not the first person who's told me that. There have been many people in my life who've either played theme music for me, like improvisationally, or said, yeah, you need to have like a little band following you around. I'm like, what did I do? But I don't know.
You're just you.
I guess so. But thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Olga.
Good morning, Wendy. So Wendy and I will be talking just in a minute about some of the pieces that she's working on right now. But I just want to remind everyone that this segment of Green Mountain Mornings is being filmed by Brattleboro Community Television. It will be online later, and rebroadcast of Green Mountain Mornings tonight is sponsored by Brattleboro Savings and Loan.
How about that?
Then
everybody can see my monkey bike helmet on television. So if that's not incentive, I don't know what is.
Especially to get a bike, because then you get a cool bike helmet.
Get a bike. I know.
So, Wendy, what are some of the things you're working on? I hear there's stuff happening in Newfane, Putney, Townsend.
Yeah, stuff is happening everywhere, Olga. Thanks for asking. So Newfane recently set a date. They have done an update to their town plan. It's not a complete rewrite. There's just some revisions to it. And the Planning Commission has done their work with it, including, approving it. And now it's at the select board level. And on July 16th, the select board will hold their own public hearing at 5 o'clock right before the select board meeting. And then if all goes well, they will adopt it. So if you're interested in the town plan, you can go to that meeting and have something to say about it if you have something to say about it. And if you want to read it, you can go to the town website. You can call the town offices. You can go to the town offices. So that's Newfane.
Okay, how about Putney?
Everybody's doing their town plan this year.
I know, it's like it's all happening all at once.
Yeah, totally. So in Putney, they are in the midst of possibly approving the fiscal year 19 Windham County Sheriff's Department contract. That's something that comes up every year, and it's contract time. And so they did table it from last week's meeting. Was it last week, 2 weeks ago? They tabled it from the last meeting, and they will be discussing it. But the amount of the contract is no surprise. They already had those figures for town meeting. Now they just have to go through the details. But according to the town manager, there's really not a lot of changes to it. Mm-hmm. But there is one new select board member in Putney, and she wanted to get herself up to speed with that contract. So they will be reviewing that.
Okay. Lots of interesting stuff. And I hear the Dollar General conversation is still happening in Townsend?
It is, yeah. On Tuesday, there was a select board meeting where that was on the agenda. I have not watched it on BCTV yet, but that is part of my assignment for this week. And, I don't know if folks read the story that was in the Commons a couple weeks ago that I wrote about the community forum about Dollar General, but supposedly there were select board members at that meeting, or maybe there were, but when asked, nobody from the select board or the planning commission identified themselves publicly.
Oh.
Yeah, which, as one person at the meeting said, that's kind of a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so.
Well, and actually, okay, so maybe I'm being a little paranoid because I'm a journalist and it's our prerogative.
Like that, yeah.
I would think, actually, given open meeting law and everything, you kind of have to, especially if there was 3 or more of them.
Yeah, and that came up just in kind of private conversation that I was overhearing as they were putting away all the food. Mm-hmm. Some folks did question that. I don't think there were enough to make quorum.
Okay.
And plus they weren't making any decisions, but you're right. I mean, to not announce that brings up all kinds of questions.
Yeah.
And some concerns in there. But at this select board meeting, as far as I know, the topic was discussed. Again, I haven't watched it yet, but it was on the agenda. And I can't imagine that there wasn't a room full of people saying, hey, we need to talk about this. Mm-hmm. So that will be coming up probably in next week's paper. And what else?
I think just before we go to break, the one other thing we have a minute to talk about is the suicide statistics that were just released by the CDC, which I talked about on my show a couple days ago.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty messed up.
Yeah,
More
Vermont's not.
it's not good.
We like to be first in the nation, but there's some first you don't necessarily want.
Absolutely. And, for anybody who's paying attention, it's no surprise that a national trend is that suicide rates are higher amongst LGBT people, LGBT youth, and also people of color. I mean, if you look at the people who are most marginalized, who are having the hardest time, they're the ones who are going to feel it the worst. And the rest of us are too. I mean, I'm a white person, but I mean, things are pretty crummy out there, and they're kind of getting crummier for people. So what I'm doing with that is talking to some local organizations that work with people who may be at risk, so folks who are marginalized, youth, etc. But I don't want to rely on just talking to clinicians because there's different viewpoints about how to work with people who are having thoughts or feelings about suicide, and they don't have to all follow the medical model. So I'm talking to a person who runs the Alternatives to Suicide support group that happens weekly. It happens on Wednesdays, and it's on a non-medical model. I'm also talking to the director of the Vermont Psychiatric Survivors Network. So, I'm trying to get multiple perspectives, just to have more information and to let people know, who's doing what to help people.
Wendy and I unfortunately have to go to break because this is a topic we could talk about for a long time.
Yes, we could.
But we will return after the commercial. Stay tuned. You rock, Miss Wendy, here on Green Mountain Mornings on WKBT 100.3 FM, AM 1490. I'm your host, Olga Peters, I'm your host, Olga Peters, and I got tired of just saying welcome back all the time, so I decided to shake things up. Wendy, tell us about the recent report on homelessness that Josh Davis gave to the select board.
Sure, yeah. So what was it? Last Tuesday, Josh Davis and, what was the other person's name? I have to look it up. But the person who's the director, I think, of operations at Groundworks.
Kendrick?
Yeah, Rihanna Kenrick. Yeah, thank you. So they were at the select board meeting to talk about their end of the season report that they created because the overflow shelter closed for the season. I think it was at the end of April. And last fall, Josh had come to the select board meeting asking for some financial support from the select board because they had to make some changes to how they structure the staffing and such at the overflow shelter. They wanted to have paid staff. And they also needed transportation because whereas in previous years the shelter was at the First Baptist Church, now this year it's up at the campus of the Winston Prouty Center, formerly the Austin School. So the select board gave Groundworks some money, which I think is the right thing to do. And so, Josh and Rihanna wanted to say, well, here's what happened. So one of the things that Rihanna really wanted to drive the point home about is what she kept referring to as a myth. And the myth is this narrative that you and I as journalists have heard over and over again.
Oh, I know where you're going.
You know where I'm going with this.
I know where you're going.
That people from other places move to Vermont, specifically to Brattleboro, those outsiders, to take advantage of our very generous social services. Things like food pantries and the drop-in center and the overflow shelter and soup kitchens, because everybody's really psyched about being homeless and desperate, and people who are homeless and desperate are so mobile. I mean, they can just hop in their cars and be like, and they'll go online on their laptops and be like, what are the places? I mean, come on, people.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So
I don't know about you, Wendy, but whenever I talk to someone who has been dealing with chronic homelessness, they somehow have a tie to this community.
Absolutely.
I have yet to meet someone who's just like, oh yeah, I knew there were lots of social services, so I came here from California
from Arizona
or whatever.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, one of the great things about having staff at a shelter for homeless people or people who are experiencing homelessness is with that staff, you can do intakes.
Right.
And you can ask people questions such as, where are you from? So I think it's 155 individuals who stayed over at the seasonal overflow shelter this past season. They were able to collect data of origin from 125 clients. And I think Rihanna explained that some folks they weren't able to get information from. But of those 125 people, 102 are from New England, 17 are from New England states other than Vermont, 6 are not from New England at all. Six out of 125. Because those are all those people flocking here in their fancy cars from Reno or whatever. And 82 are from Windham County. She said they truly are neighbors in our own community. And I think we need to remember that. I mean, I don't know, like, do folks who say this thing about, oh, these people are from somewhere else, do they visit the neighborhoods in Brattleboro where, people who are less fortunate live? Do they know how hard it is?
Good question.
I just wonder. So anyway, so the reason why this is kind of all happening now, it's not only is, the end of the year report ready from Groundworks, but also the state, there was a statewide, and I'm flipping through the paper here because I have to refer this. Yeah, the point in time count. So that's been released. And what it found is that homelessness is on the rise. More people, at least in that one snapshot, which was taken January 31st, 2018, probably a really cold night. We're talking about the end of January.
Yeah.
The numbers are up. I think it's something like 66 more people from the previous year. Check the paper. Don't quote me on that. I don't want to read my whole article. But the only vague improvement, and it's so minimal, it's barely even worth mentioning, is that the percentage of people of under 18, of children who are homeless, is down by like 2%. But still, 40% of people experiencing homelessness on that night were part of a household with at least one child in it. These are kids. It's messed up. The numbers also show that, and this is their words, a disproportionate number of people identified as Black or African American and Hispanic and Latino are homeless compared to their population in the state.
Right.
So what puts you at risk? You're a kid. You're a person of color. Also, a number of people counted on that night are fleeing domestic or sexual violence.
Right. Yeah.
So, these aren't people who are making the choice to be homeless. Like, these things are happening.
Right. And you were talking about myths earlier in the segment about, people flock here for the great services. Another myth is you end up homeless because you're lazy.
Yeah.
And quite often you end up homeless because life throws you so many freaking curveballs.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you never saw them coming.
I mean, other people who, numbers of them are homeless are veterans. And, with all of this flag waving and that goes on at the national level in this country, and we can't even make sure that our veterans are taken care of. Another thing that was brought up was, looking at different factors was people who experience homelessness, whether chronic or temporary, have substance abuse issues or severe mental health issues. But what I wish the data would provide, and I know it may be a hard thing to track, is did those substance abuse issues and mental health issues come up after this person lost their home? And all of those things that would happen to a person in that trajectory downward to make them lose their home, a family breaking up, some sort of violence in the home, losing work, etc. Did those substance abuse issues and mental health issues happen before they lost their home or after? Because I think that's important to note when we're talking about, sort of a chicken and egg thing. What's the cause? To just say, oh, these are all crazy and lazy people. No, what's really going on?
Right. Well, and what I find really powerful about asking that question and trying to see the, like you said, the trajectory is our system. A lot of our social service systems, they're very good, but they don't help people until you're absolutely like on the pavement with nothing else.
And even then, they may not help you because you may have to check into a place every day, or there may be, especially if you're a person who experiences mental illness and you've been in the system, if you don't take the medication that they give you all the time, they will take away your services. Meanwhile, good luck keeping yourself on a schedule and getting the medication, keeping yourself on a schedule to take them, because psych meds require a pretty strict schedule because discontinuation can be really disturbing. But also the side effects are really terrible. I mean, there's so many demands placed on people who are already marginalized and who are already having a hard time. There's got to be a more humane way to take care of people.
I agree with that. And again, going back to that trajectory, if we could catch people sooner and help them sooner,
Absolutely.
it would reverse a lot. It would stem the tide of trauma.
Yeah, absolutely.
And probably help us a lot in the long run.
Indeed.
Wendy and I are going to go to break. We will return after the local news. Welcome back to Green Mountain Mornings here on WKVT 100.3 FM, AM 1490. I'm your host, Olga Peters. It's about 38 minutes past the top of the hour. Glad you can join me, and glad Wendy Levy from the Commons is here in the studio with me.
Good morning, everybody.
I hear you got out and about a couple weekends ago to a whole new area that wasn't Windham County.
Yes, it's true. They let me out. So last weekend, I went to Peterborough, New Hampshire, because they do a thing every year called Thing in the Spring. And I think it's the 11th year that it's been going on, and it's an visual art and music festival, also crafts and things. And it happens in the beginning of June, hence Thing in the Spring. And, Peterborough is, I guess, about an hour from here, and it's another small town. It's about the same size downtown as Brattleboro, maybe. Sometimes I have a hard time comparing, because streets aren't laid out all the same.
Right.
Anyway, it's run by this nonprofit organization called the Glass Museum. And there's a bunch of venues all over town, day and evening, where musicians are playing. And some of them are local, regional, including some that are national. Some of the events are free. Some of them you pay, but you pay once and you can kind of come and go all day because there's a full roster. Some of them, the tickets are a little more expensive because they're bigger draws. But, there's bands playing outside of the bookstore, inside a museum, at town hall. It's really wonderful. And then on Saturday, there's this thing called the Broke Affordable Arts Fair, where everything in there is less than $50. And
Sweet.
It's all people set up on tables, in the upstairs of the town hall. Selling, there's a bunch of folks from Brattleboro there, like Tavernier Chocolates is there, Sarah Rice, who's a fine artist, is there, Hanako, who sells soaps that she makes, Whimsy soap. So there's people from here there, but it's also, people, comic book artists, potters, you name it.
Amazing.
And it's really wonderful, and there's no admission to get into that, and it's really fun. And it made me think, why can't we do that here? The closest analog I can think of is the Literary Festival, where it incorporates downtown. Things are happening at different venues, but it's not trying to take you out of town. And maybe you know where I'm going with this.
I'm kind of guessing you're referring to a recent parade we had on, I think it was June 2nd or 3rd, and it involved cows.
Livestock, yes. So let's do a compare and contrast. So the weekend before that was the Strolling of the Heifers, the cow parade. And, that brings a bunch of people to town, and it happens right through downtown. But then everybody is herded, so to speak, up to, away from the center of town, up to the Common, up to the Retreat Meadows, and downtown gets abandoned. And to me, that's a real shame. I was a business owner a handful of years ago. The parade, I don't think I closed on that day, but I should have. The parade didn't go right by my store. It was half a block away. Mm-hmm. Nobody came in. Other business owners I've talked to have said the same thing. Either they would close or they would want to close because everybody, anybody who would normally shop couldn't get near it. And the visitors were all taken out of downtown. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't helpful to businesses at all. Now, mind you, I have not polled every single business owner downtown. So take my data for what it is. It's anecdotal and it's incomplete. Yet, if you think about it for a moment, you'll understand that what I'm saying makes some sense. Mm-hmm. So I thought, why can't somebody do this in Brattleboro? And then a person might say, well, why don't you do it? And my answer would be, I don't have time and I don't run a nonprofit. But to have musicians and fine artists and, craftspeople doing things in different venues downtown over, a few days festival, it didn't seem to me that the normal business in Peterborough was disrupted. You could still park, you could still go to the stores. It wasn't like the streets were clogged, but a lot of people were wandering around, going to the stores and having lunch in the places. It wasn't filled with food trucks, which, yes, food trucks are nice, but they're generally not downtown merchants.
Right.
So there was a few food trucks, but otherwise you could go into a restaurant or go into the diner or go into the cafe. There wasn't a ton of competition against the established businesses who are already there and paying taxes. Mm-hmm. It could happen here. So I wanted to talk about that today because I thought, wow, maybe there's some folks out there who have some energy who might want to do something like this. There's so many musicians in this area.
There are.
So many fine artists. And we have a lot of great smaller venues in Brattleboro that, could be part of this. I'm thinking about the Stone Church. I don't know if you've been into the Stone Church since they renovated.
No, I haven't, but I hear the sound is incredible.
The sound is incredible because they got a professional to set up the sound system, like an actual, audio engineer. The lighting is good. It's beautiful. It always was beautiful, but now it's even more beautiful in there. And it has a pretty good capacity. I'm thinking of like the Hooker Dunham Theater and 118 Elliott and even the bars and even the bookstores and the churches. And that's, to me, it seems like that's what Thing in the Spring is doing, is it's utilizing what's already there. Everything doesn't have to be a 50 or 100 seat venue.
Right.
Some things want a smaller draw. Some things should be free. Mm-hmm. And it's a nice mix. So yeah, I had a great time. It was really wonderful to be, to be able to walk around a town where all this stuff is happening, but it's not like a huge music festival where you have to like walk with your lawn chair for 3 miles. You could just kind of wander around and, sit down when you needed to. But yeah, so I wanted to share that, like how much of a good time I had at that and how much of a boost it must have given. Mm-hmm. I mean, the only time I've ever been to Peterborough, I'd never been to Peterborough before last year's Thing in the Spring. And since going to it, I've been back to Peterborough because I got to know the town that way, enjoyed it, and wanted to go back.
Ah, see?
So there's that. So yeah, I don't know. Somebody out there, do this. I'll help you. I just can't do it. Like I can't do it all.
Yeah, actually, the way Brattleboro is set up is it would be very easy. You mentioned some things being free, some things being paid for. It would be so easy to have the paid for concerts
totally
in some place like the Stone Church, the Hooker Dunham.
Yeah, somebody's at the door and they're taking your money.
Right. And then at something like Pliny Park,
absolutely.
The walk through between High Street and Harmony parking lot under the Brooks house.
Well, yeah, because they were supposed to. Wasn't DBA supposed to do something with where Frankie's used to be?
Yeah, not the DBA. I think the folks who own the Brooks house are working on. Creating something.
All right. Because that's a great spot.
There's a spot outside, and those could be easily free.
Yeah, totally. The walkway by the co-op, the Whetstone walkway, could do stuff there. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. But, it needs to be something that isn't going to harm the businesses, that's going to incorporate them and welcome them and utilize them. Because, they need it.
Yeah.
It's not easy being a business owner, a small business owner in this town.
It is not.
No, I was there and I ran screaming from it. So I couldn't take it. I had to go into, journalism, which isn't that much easier, but it's a totally different set of responsibilities. But anyway, yeah, so I wanted to talk about that today, and thank you for giving me time to talk about it, because it's kind of a call to arms. I know there are people who have good energy. I mean, the Future Collective that was together a couple years ago, which has kind of petered out, they were doing things on a smaller scale like that, like their annual Halloween show, and they had other things, but it was typically just at one venue. Although they did have a sort of a summer festival where it was in a couple places, like a couple parks. But, that was a great idea. And that was great energy that they harnessed, of the people who were involved in that. And I think it can be done again.
It would be fun.
Yeah.
Let's see. I wonder if, I'm going to put this out there.
Yeah, put
We'll
it out
see
there.
if anyone's listening. There's some good folks doing things like the literary festival.
It's true.
And there's folks running the venues already, like the Stone Church.
Yeah, and the Latches.
Who could
and
kind
118 Elliot.
join forces.
They could join forces. Even
and each take a little piece, so it's not all on one person.
Totally. And then, what about Eugene Newman at the Jazz Center? He could be a part of it, maybe bring something downtown. I'm thinking of the Brattleboro Music Center, which does like classical and chamber. It doesn't just have to be one type of music.
Right.
Why not do like a big thing?
And then the artists, the performers could stick around and do question and answer. And the question and answer could happen inside businesses.
That's true.
So people go for the question and answer and they stay for the shopping.
Yes, stay for the shopping. Totally. Well, I just thought of another town that recently had a big thing like that happened at multiple venues, and it was in Putney at Next Stage. Well, Next Stage ran it.
Right.
What was it? Legacy Putney.
Yeah.
And all of those events were free, too, which was pretty incredible. And of course, they had to work hard and get grant money, but they did it, and they were successful, and it was like that. There was films, there was music, there was food, there was storytelling. If basically one organization and their community partners could do that, we can do that in Brattleboro.
Okay, Brattleboro.
Come
you
on.
have been put on notice.
Yes. You've been warned. We're waiting for this. And I would love to be a part of it, but I don't have the time or the energy
To spearhead
it.
Okay.
No. So someone else do it.
But you would be a worker bee.
I'll help. Well, because I'm in contact with a lot of bands, and a lot of different artists. And, it would be easy for me to try to drum up support. I got a lot of connections.
You are a connected
I'm pretty
lady.
connected. Yeah.
Hey, Wendy, it was so great having you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Have a good weekend, Olga, and have a good weekend, radio listeners.
Yes, and I'm not going to wish you a good weekend yet because I'll be back at the end of the hour. But
I'm going away.
And Wendy's going away. So thank you, Wendy.
Thank you for having me.